Now let's move to our next speaker. So the topic is more close to how do we use analytics for understanding where the markets are, and this is going to be covered from our friend from Denmark. So Steen Rasmussen, co-founder and director of data innovation at IIH Nordic. And I learned that IIH stands for Internet Intelligence House. But please, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So, finally getting a chance to share what's on my mind. So when I got invited here to talk, for me it was a big thing because I really wanted to share a lot of stuff. But I think my challenge is that I represent a type of data that is not the perfect data that you are used to work with. Because I've been working with digital analytics, online marketing data for the last 20 years, right? And if there's something that is recognized in our industry is that on a global scale of quality, that data sucks. It's not fantastic data. It's not something AI and BI people would throw themselves on their knees and celebrate our data. And what it also is, it's horribly biased. So my story today to you guys is really about how can we tap into this imperfection and this bias in the data to actually provide something that has immense value for the organizations and for the businesses. And I think the first place to start this was saying there is value in technology even though we sometimes do not recognize it. So the story of the Pacific battle, I'm not going to bore you with everything, but one of the details in it was that the story goes that one of the main reasons the US defeated a bigger Japanese fleet in the Pacific was because they used radar. Radar was something they had pushed massively and grown, but it wasn't like the Japanese didn't have radar, but management didn't believe in radar. So they actually pushed down all research on radar in the Japanese fleet, and it turned out the radar was one of the decisive factors to win the battle at Midway. So it's kind of a good little detail in reflection saying that even though a technology is there, sometimes we might be tapping into it the wrong way or not seeing it from the right angle to actually provide the value that it can. So, I'm Steen Rasmussen, senior partner and co-founder at an agency in Copenhagen called IIH Nordic. We specialize a lot in this online data, but we hired our first machine learning PhD in 2017, which makes us nerds. But it's really about the commercial focus and saying what can we have and how can we use that to create more value and to push an agenda that is focused on the value. So one of the things where we say we take our own medicine, that in 2017, we also, as the first larger company, 30 people in the world, went to a 4-day work week, 30 hours with full pay, because we had spent a 3-year change management process gathering our own data and changing our processes. So tapping into what we did and saying that the potential was there in the data, and we've been doing it ever since, and no, we have not seen any losses in turnover or anything. So I think that's another way of approaching data, saying that it's in our DNA and our culture. So the father to four-ish is just giving you guys a chance to open a conversation. I've been told that Finnish people, if there's a lot of Finnish people in the room, sometimes needs an extra nudge. So this is my extra nudge saying, hey, what the hell was that? So you have an excuse now to come up to me and ask that question. So you're welcome. One of the other things with IIH, we've been in the market, this is going to be our 20th year, but for the 12 of those years, we've been getting the award from the client side for being the best agency in Denmark for data and analytics. So that's kind of what we bring to the table. We are nerds, but commercial nerds. Now, when we look at online data, traditionally, what we see when people normally talk about it, they focus a lot on the performance angle, but we actually have 4 different angles in relation to the data that is interesting from our perspective. Today I'm going to be focused on the user and the market, because the traditional stuff, it really is around optimizing the website and the online communication, but just tapping into this and saying that there is radar quality stuff in this data set that we're missing because we are not seeing the full potential of the data set. So the first very basic example of that was one of my most favorite customers was a CEO of a company. They were producing stuff for the garden. They had a very brand-oriented website, and every time I told him this is a good KPI to measure this activity, he would say, Steen, it's no good, that's circumstantial evidence. We cannot look at when are the stores open, we cannot look at people downloading stuff. It's all circumstantial evidence, it doesn't prove anything. So really hardcore approach to data. So what we did instead was saying, okay, but then can we then understand your users from a different perspective, so you will get some insights out of these interactions that you can use in another way. And we did something that was really trivial in the sense that the first thing we needed to understand where the customers were in the customer journey or the purchase process. So we wanted to dive into that, but if you look at this population of web activity, it doesn't really necessarily say that, right? So you have the situation where you will be going in and you'll just see a lot of stuff, so you want people to segment. So first thing we did was we asked population or the people on the website, why are you here? So there's a simple basic saying, are you here because you already have the product and you want to know how to use it? Are you here because you don't have the product and you're considering buying it? Are you here because you've heard about the product and you hate it? Are you here because you're using a competitive product? Are you here because you already have it in the shed but you lost the manual? So kind of putting this in context. And that was fine, but because that gave an angle on their purpose on the website. And then when they left, we asked them a question that followed up on their purpose, saying, okay, are you more or less likely to buy our product now? Are you more or less likely to pull it out of the shed? Are you more or less likely to throw it away? To kind of use that as an incentive and an understanding of saying, everything that happens in between was then we could use that to determine what was happening, what elements in the process did they experience, and what directions did they pull them in. And that meant that we could start saying, okay, we need more video communication, and if people are going this direction, we need to add information about this. Because I think one of the things that we forget, because we are so used to talking about amazing good data, is we forget that customers are horribly biased people. Right? Most of the people out there, they buy based on their biases and not on facts. So we come here as an amazing factor-driven tribe that focus so much on pure data and fact, and everything has to be scientific. And then outside the building, they're all assholes that just follows their gut and their instinct and what they feel like. Right? And to catch that, we have to do something different that taps into that in one way or the other. And this was one of those things. So basically, the promise I'm trying today is kind of give you a little couple of extra tools on your radar so you can tap into that. So for us, the beginning where we see this accelerating now, and the reason why I'm talking up here about this is that with especially agentic AI, we can see this is something that it can suddenly be supercharged and gather data in a completely different way. Because we can actually open up everything online, so it's not only about the website, it's about everything that happens online becomes a data source that is available for us. Yes, it's still biased, but it offers us some opportunities that is so amazing because it's all the information that is available from everybody out there. So this is one of the things that we're pushing now. An example of that is competitor insights. Competitor insights is one of the things that is really interesting because what we see driving decisions is very often what are the competitors doing? So in this case, it's for a customer. They were interested in specific competitors. So we went out and we built them a monitor that would say, okay, cool, what marketing activities are they doing? What products are they focusing on? What are their team size? Going in on LinkedIn saying what are the vacancies? And what profiles do they have on the team? Are there happening changes in their organization? What technology stack are they using in relation to pushing this agenda? And how much would that estimated cost? And then we can see their online activity and search engine positions. But the main idea here is actually saying, are we investing more or less than our competitors? And the main KPI we actually set up for this in relation to the customer was talking about momentum. So how much speed is the competition adding to their situation? Because we could see that depending on, so they monitor a couple of competitors saying, okay, how aggressively are they pushing different technologies and agendas, and are you being left behind? And it's a way to actually go in and understand the market that you're working in, because it's some amazing resources that you wouldn't necessarily tap into otherwise. And it's one of the things that people love, knowing what the competition is doing, because then we don't feel so lonely, right? So we have a good idea that we might be outperforming them, but we have something really interesting to benchmark against. Now, this is just for the marketing department, but this can basically be set up for everybody. And the beautiful thing about this is that we've been talking so much today about regulation, but this is publicly available data that is open. It is not related to persons or personal data. So we're basically moving into a space where it's open, neutral data that we can actually access and act upon, and we're not breaching any rules and regulations in this. Then you can talk about saying, but maybe it's unethical to scrape the competition's website, but it's out there. If they put it out there, I guess it's public knowledge, right? The three other things I want to push in this is that everything you, or most of you, or all of you already have some sort of online platform where you gather data in relation to what happens on your website. So it's an existing cost. This is not trying to push a new infrastructure. It's actually trying to push an existing data set into your thinking and saying, hey, this can actually open up a lot of new opportunities in relation to what happens. It's almost real time in the sense that what happens on the website when we gather the data, we get that within 24 hours. So if we use it as something to indicate user interest and behavior, which I will show in one of the other cases, then it's already, then we can actually get information from the users much faster than we can from any other channel. So it's a live feedback tapping into the opportunities we have there. And hell, it's already implemented, right? So there's nothing new in this. There might be something in relation to revisiting at the end, but it's something you already have that is available. So tapping into that, and it's basically tool agnostic. Now, I showed you the four corners of the model before, and basically what we found is saying that all of this is something we build because it impacts the purchase decision of the users. So the main reason I will not buy your product is because the competition is having a sale on their product, right? So no matter what you say online, that sale will actually change my behavior, or they give me a discount, or I'm looking at a pair of shoes and they're available somewhere else for cheaper. So the competitive things and the market is impacting my decisions. It could be aspects about the user, and this is where the bias and the fashion and all these factors come in, because what is available for the users at the moment will impact it. And then we end up in the middle with what is traditional analytics. But just knowing that all these layers is something we can extract from the data that we already have. Which leads me to another case. So a customer that basically was interested in saying, okay, we are in a very competitive market. We're really interested in being able to plan and look at the trends. So instead of looking at their online data just as in relation to online sales, they actually use this as a barometer in relation to saying, okay, what products are trending? What products are going down? Are there products trending that we need to promote? Is our superseller, is that de-escalating in relation to interest? So actually being ahead of time so we can use the trends in this real-time behavior in relation to understand the interest in the market in relation to our product, right? And then being able to add the core thing around that, the bias towards us. Because our brand is something, basically a brand is a bias, right? It's a preference to something, or it's an idea that we stand for something in a specific context. So that's kind of the idea going in and saying this data is something you already have. It's something that's available to tap into. Now, what we recommend people do with it is basically use it on an ongoing basis to align towards this. I don't know if you know the future cone, but it's a way of planning and seeing the future. So we normally we start here, we say, if we don't do anything, we're going to end up here. We want to end up down here. So what is it that we have to do to end up in that space? So it's kind of strategic planning, but then using the data along the way to make sure that we are correcting and course correcting in relations to where we want to go, right? So it opens up a direction in relation to actually saying this is a long-term planning. So the classic thing, so we don't stand here in time and say, oh, we want to be down here, and then we have to panic and scramble and do a lot of stuff. So we can actually along the way adjust where we want to be because we have added these dimensions early into this process. This ties into something because we've been spending a lot of time, like most of us, thinking along this model around data, saying that if we gather all the data in the world, then we can make all decisions. So it's kind of been, for many years, it's been a big land grab at saying the one who had the most data when they die wins. We've just been gathering a lot of data. And the challenge here is that what we see is that when we try to gather so much data, then the challenge becomes that we have to maintain all this data and we have to maintain all these sources. And if we don't have a purpose in relation to actually using it for something, then it's just a cost. So the idea that we're pushing now and for inspiration is saying, flipping it and saying the data we gather is decision-driven. So going around to the stakeholders in the organization, talking about, okay, what decisions do you want to make with this data? So what decisions are you facing every day where my data could make it easier for you to make these decisions, right? So the refocusing around that. And then gather the data that they need. Yes, then we potentially can add more data. If we can see a potential in something, we can have conversations with them and saying, we can expand your thinking or we can add extra dimensions. But the core thing is flipping it and saying, what we do should be decision first and not data first. Good. So the last case. Anna is also a customer of ours. Anna is sitting as the CDO of a team that's been sliced. She's basically lost half her employees over the last 2 years. And what she doesn't have is time. And what she wants is all the insights that we provided. So our first suggestion was saying, hey, super, we've done this before. We take your analytics data, we put it into an LLM, and you can just ask it whatever you want, and then you will get the questions. And she was like, yeah, that's nice, but it's not good enough because I don't have time to ask these questions. I said, okay, so what we can do is we can put a Google Home on your table so you can ask it when you come into the office in the morning, say, good morning, so what's new yesterday? And then it will go in and talk her through the anomalies and variations and what was up and down in relation to the data. And that was fine, and she loved that a lot. And she was like, yeah, but now, Steen, it's really annoying that I cannot tell it I want to change something. Because the LLM only goes backwards, it looks at the data, it doesn't help me to do anything. So what we're looking at now with her is saying, okay, so you want to be able to say, okay, so increase marketing spend here, decrease marketing spend here, run a new campaign, change the creative, explore a new segment. So actually using it as an assistant, as a replacement for one of the people she lost, right? So this is the frontier that we're looking into now. And this is where we are in relations to making things happening here. And the good thing by doing it this way is that you both get the history and the documentations of the decisions and things that has been made during the way. I think for us, the big change, and this is getting into the home stretch, the big change is saying we a lot of years we try to sell digital transformation like everybody else. But when we look at most companies now, what we see is that we messed up, right? This is, of course, not you, that's all the Danish companies. You would never. But every time we had a problem, we tried to solve it by adding more data. But we kind of missed out on the processes and tying it together, and we lost more people because all the tool sales said, well, now you can do twice the things in half the time. And then it was like, okay, get rid of the people because then we could save some money. So the problem is that we have too much tech, too few people, and too few processes. And this is why where AI comes in our book, right? Because what we see with the agentic AI is being able to tie the processes together, like in the case of Anna, to go in and rethink what is the role and the processes, and where do we need people and where do we don't need people in relation to make these decisions. So, just know that you have an unfulfilled potential in your organization. Unless you already tapped into this data set, do yourself a favor, have conversations with your marketing department in relations to your digital analytics and marketing analytics, because it is an amazing untapped resource, also thinking outside the box in relation to what else this data can bring in. So 3 things to do. Revisit the decision, have a conversation with people about what decisions they want to make, and explore if you don't already have the data, validate that you have that data, and if you don't have it, then it's actually not necessarily a big challenge to go in and do it, and then get it. And then, of course, consolidate around this. This is free resources, it's things you already have. So with that, I'm going to say thank you.
Well, thank you, Steen. And why don't we do the other way around now? Because
so I ask you questions.
Well, no. Well, we can do that. We can do that. But since you were nudging, so let's nudge a little bit more. I do have a question here in reserve. But how about any show of hands? Anybody who would like to ask Steen? Because you were asking for kind of dialogue. So
yeah.
Any questions to Steen?
So I would just say that I've been presenting in Finland a couple of times, and of course, you're not the typical Finns, but I can see you're sitting so far apart that it actually seems like there's still a curfew in relation to being close to each other.
Yeah, well, that's the algorithm we use. Yeah, it's very well known. Hey, okay. Well, I'm not seeing any hands. Well, there is one. Go ahead. So you will have a microphone, so just wait a sec. Please.
Yes, thank you for the amazing talk and sharings and many points for discussion. And I mean, just a little introduction. You can call me Ling, and I work in marketing analytics. And one trend that I have seen that also is in your presentation is the ability for us to locate our customers and try to make more better personas based on actual data instead of what we deduce our customers are inside a business room. But however, I think as there are so many regulations in the EU coming, and also with the changing customer base, so they are more tech savvy, they know that they can opt out of the cookies, nor do they want to give us the information to better understand them. How do you think we can tackle this in marketing analytics, and how would you think it will impact the future of locating customers in marketing analytics? Thank you.
So, so first off, the entire subject would probably require another 20 minutes and slides, but I do see saying that there's 2 angles in relation to it. So one of the things is saying that what we're trying to do is actually saying we will look at the data, and what we're looking for is not necessarily tying personas to individuals, but actually looking at biases in the entire population. So, and that might be hidden. So it's trying to make it as high level as possible, because we've been looking at a lot of the customer data platforms where we try to aggregate the data around the individual, and I see that as getting more and more complicated. But by going to the higher level, that opens up. And then what we're actually doing, and this is a research project, but it's actually going in and having the reflection of saying, in the future, we will have less data in general, right? Because people will remove the data from us. So what we are doing now is we're actually trying to, using AI to train populations to do synthetic segments. So actually saying if we can get the users to come to us, then we can create our own users, and not just synthetic users, but actually going in and saying synthetic segments with the same biases and problems. And that's why we focus so much on the biases, right? Because that will change the way that we can work, and we can actually do a lot of testing, but this is really early days. But just saying this is the next frontier that we see.
Very good. Excellent. So there was one question on, let's say, your expectations maybe on well, you mentioned the availability of external data, but do you see changes how organizations are going to publish data? For example, because more of this is possible. So, for example, just posting fake job ads, for example, so that you will not get the right, view on what they are doing as competitors.
Absolutely, and I see there's also in some industries already being posted fake job ads, but it's something you get built into the model if it's very repetitive, the same job that gets posted again and again. So either they're damn bad at retaining the people in that job, or they're really bad at recruiting.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see the patterns in things happening. And the challenge is that saying, sure, some companies might say, okay, then we're going to play defense, and the only way you're going to get our information is if you request it.
Sure.
But what we see right now is that the customers don't have time. We are so much driven by convenience. So if somebody offers me the numbers and the other guys, I have to request it. Most likely, I will be moving on in the process where I got the numbers before the other guy has had time to send it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a competition on speed.
Yeah. So it doesn't make sense to make it too difficult to get. You will.
Well, you can, but then you
will just
then you're
lose,
hurting. You're not
your audience, basically.
Yeah, you're hurting the market, your customers as well as the competition.
Yeah, I understand. So, well, obviously this links to the question of data quality, and the event CDOIQ is about data quality. So do you do quality enhancement? I mean, you mentioned now, this was an example of quality enhancement, I would guess. But how much is that a part of your job? Just trying to somehow beef up the quality of the data that you gather from all of these heterogeneous sources?
I think so. So everything is about data quality. It's also why we turned it around from trying to gather all data to actually focus on the decision and saying what is it that we need.
Ask the right questions. And
and it really goes well in relations to the things that are legally, and saying gather only what you need and don't gather everything. So it was kind of spun out of that, but you could just see a value in calibrating around the decision making and not on the data.
So understand what kind of problem you are dealing with and what kind of decisions you need to make first, then think through the process, and then you get to the actual data that you need. That was your story.
So what is the problem that I'm trying to solve for you? And say, okay, cool, then you need this data, because the challenge is, and I think if we look at people in organizations, if I start by asking, so what data do you want? It's too vague.
Yeah.
It's too difficult for you to decide, but if we do this together by me asking you what decision are you trying to make, then my knowledge of the data set makes it much easier for me to come with suggestions in relations to actually offering you something that will have actual value for you.
So that goes back to the use case, the business value, and telling stories about that, as you did. So thank you so much, Steen.
Well, thank you for having me.
Great pleasure to have you.